we go. Kreditsu. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Beating a game on a Friday. Woot woot. Alrighty. Admittedly, I did not write down my thoughts in as much detail as I would have liked, but also the game was considerably shorter than I would have anticipated, so, kind of snuck up on me. But yeah, Bloomtown. Another or a different story has been conquered. Woot woot. My first impressions were based off of day 1 through 3 this time, because I forgot to write down my thoughts on day 2 or 1. And those first impressions were largely the same thoughts as the demo. Great visuals, super intrigued about what the game has to offer. Uh, Music audio levels in battles aren't the same outside of battles. I actually enjoy the music outside of battles, but it's tough to hear it because I have to reduce the volume to accommodate for the battle music, which is nice, by the way. And the last thing I have is this appearing to take inspiration from a very popular video game series caught me very off guard. Wasn't expecting that. And my overall thoughts on this game, I enjoyed it. Admittedly, I am kind of like there's kind of a fence, and I'm sitting on both sides of the fence, but also on top of the fence on on how my likes and dislikes happen with this game. It's a really weird position to be in because I I enjoy a lot of like the interactions and the character quirks and um like like the overall gameplay. I like the the like attempts and execution towards innovating a we'll just say like a series that already exists and kind of putting their own twist and spin on things to it. But there's also aspects of it that don't come across as strongly and also kind of miss completely. So it's one of those things where it's like I enjoyed this game a lot, but there's also things that I didn't enjoy about it a lot. And so like ultimately the gameplay portions are the ones that I gravitate to most. And so that's why this game turns out to be a like for me. But when you start getting into other aspects like story and whatnot, it doesn't quite um, it doesn't go where I was hoping for or delve deep enough into the things that I was hoping for. So for the story, was it satisfying? Um, I'm going to say no on this one. It's it's I- I'm gonna get kind of out of order here, but it's kind of difficult to to go through the story of this game and find something to latch onto and then have it like stick with you for the entirety of it. Um, this game starts off where we have to go visit our grandpa to stay at his house for summer vacation. And we encounter Lucifer and we get powers, and our quest is basically to exorcise three giga demons. And once we do that, then like everything will be good again. But there's almost no in between story once you get those powers and once you get that little ending segment there. Everything in it is so like segmentized, but it's segmented in a way where it's trying to I don't know the best way to describe exactly what I want to say, but like it it's its own separate part, but it's still trying to be a part of the whole game. And so when you get into the first part where it's like the librarian, that that librarian section is very isolated, and it effectively has nothing to do with any grander story or narrative that's going on outside of that librarian section. And the same thing happens with the woodcutter, and the same thing happens with Mr. Lewis. And so when you consider that the entirety of the game is those three separate sections, and there's no narrative to link them together to the point where like it creates a story where characters are coming across things and learning from them and then building upon that learning, and meanwhile they're discovering, you know, why these events are connected and how they are affecting the world around them and whatnot. Since there's basically none of that, it just it's like these really short narrative moments, and I think that's primarily why it's not satisfying to me. Did it feel complete? Uh, yeah, I'll say it felt complete. Very curious about some of the end moments there. There's a lot of opportunity to kind of mess around with that ending, and I'm a little sad that I didn't get to Swan to get the votes, but you know, it is what it is. That was the pacing. So the pacing in a game like this is kind of interesting because I kind of liken this game to an open world game a little bit, where you kind of have the choice to go do whatever you want, and it's how you use your time. uh like that's how the pacing of the game goes. And so if you want to just barrel through the main story, then you know the pacing is probably going to work out great. But if you go do all the side activities and things like that, then you know the pacing is going to fall behind. But I would say overall, um, I think this game did a pretty good job of not making all the other activities and whatnot be absolutely required. And plus, because of the game's length, you can you can spend a lot of time doing the pacing destroyer stuff early and then set yourself up for success towards the mid and late game, which is kind of what I did. You know, I bought a gun, and that carried me for a little while. Thoughts on the story? I'm definitely struggling to find any continuous story. I'm sort of reminded of the open world games where you're given a main quest and are then just allowed to run off and do whatever you want. There's obviously the contract to defeat demons, but that's more of what serves as a launch pad to get started. As of the woodcutter, none of the areas have any connection to each other. None of the characters progress on a new level of understanding within themselves, to their friends, or those around them. We don't learn about this alternate world and why we are important enough to do this. So, this kind of touching on the was the story satisfying aspect, it's like I there are moments of character growth throughout this, but I don't think there's moments of character growth that are spread throughout the entirety of the game through the main story segments. A lot of the character growth that I saw was um, the the hangouts with your party members and friends and things like that, which a lot of those were really nice. So it would have just been really nice to have a a something to tie everything together. Having like we do the librarian quest, and it's like, okay, that one can be separate. It's getting us introduced to everything. But maybe during the woodcutter segment, we start getting impressions that, Lucifer is not exactly being as trustworthy as we thought he would be. But we don't have any proof, and it's just like these random things that could be nothing. And then we get to Mr. Lewis, and it's like, okay, maybe those little things that we caught on before, maybe we were onto something. Um, and by the time we get up to the ending segment, it's like, do we want to act on these suspicious things, or do we want to just keep going on? Because I think the ending segment here was really nice. It's just I don't feel like there was a proper build up to that moment, so it just kind of came off uh, like a little jarring to me. Uh, but yeah. The dungeons appear to offer some insight into the highlighted villains, but it doesn't seem like that really prompts the characters to think about their lifestyles, actions, and opinions about the world and how they interact with it. The librarian kidnaps a child because she abused hers and then was taken away from her. How does that affect the children who just went through a demon dungeon and rescued this girl? Think about that. What self reflecting about this strange moment can they do to correlate the events they witnessed with their interpretation of the world around them? How does the librarian's events get added onto the next section of the woodcutter? The woodcutter took a different approach, but largely had the same lack of character interaction and self reflection for the party members. It was here that it felt like there was a lack of impact to what was happening. Emily was chased by a crazy guy trying to kill her, and the after effects were extremely tame. One light conversation with Hugo before bed, no nightmares, no trauma, just forgotten. Yeah, I feel like um there was a ton of opportunity for Emily to have an absurd amount of self-reflection and kind of like a post-traumatic moment. She was just chased by a a demon woodcutter that was trying to kill her, which had to be one of the most terrifying, if not the most terrifying thing she's ever experienced in her entire life. Um, I feel like there should be so much more impact to moments like that throughout the story that should affect the characters and their interactions and their conversations with other people. Um, Time should be put into uh, how those characters feel about those moments and how it affects their day to day lives and how they change their lives because of those moments that happen to them. Um, for gameplay mechanics and design, what gameplay elements stand out? I like the initial expansiveness of Bloomtown. There's not a ton to do, but there are a variety of things that can be done throughout the day. Yeah, so when when the game like first opens up, you only have that one section of the city basically. Um, but it felt like there was the perfect amount of things to interact with. I could, plant some plants. I could go um, to the park. I could go get a job to make some money. Um, I could go into the first dungeon. Like it didn't feel overwhelming for the amount of things that could be done. And I think the opening section is a perfect amount of things that you can do and interact with and feel like it's it's helpful to interact with those things and like the choices are meaningful. So I enjoyed that, and then like hanging out with the friends and things like that. It felt like time was uh, perfectly allocated in those moments via the various activities. I don't think I have this written down, but I'm just gonna put it here. Um, Being able to fast travel is very very cool. Um, wasn't expecting that, and it seems like fast traveling is quote unquote overpowered as well, because it doesn't, as far as I could tell, um, pass time. But moving around the city does pass time, so that was a very interesting aspect too. I also like that multiple things can be done in a single day. I can hang out with all the friends, do the grocery job, and maybe have time left over to go to the underside still. So, this game, I mentioned it several times throughout the playthrough. Like, it feels like it's taking inspiration from a popular series out there. And I feel like this game, uh, like it's taking inspiration, but it's not like a one to one conversion for it. It takes on its own identity, and while still utilizing familiar aspects to it. I like that I don't just get locked into doing like one to two things per day, and then I have this little mascot telling character telling me what I can and can't do at every second of the moment. Um, I like that I can make, just a. I could spend my entire day just making a bunch of lockpicks, or I could spend my entire day just watching movies. Um, I can go work and then hang out with two friends. Um, like I'm not arbitrarily restricted to things because the time values assigned to the things that I can do are short enough that I feel like I'm spending a day doing things rather than just like moving a title card around. And so um, this is one of those scenarios where I feel like a game saw its inspiration and was like, how can we not only put our own spin on the formula, but improve upon the formula to make it more fun to interact with for our game and our systems and our mechanics and things like that. And I think this game really succeeded in doing that. Uh, I do wish some takes. I do wish some takes that have already been done had the option to skip. Some takes. For example, I don't need to see Emily uh, helping at the grocery store every time. I'm glad I put that example in here because I don't know what I mean by some takes. So I think a better example is going to the gym. The gym, I don't know, we were sitting there for like 30 seconds, 45 seconds, going through the animations. Seeing that once, fine, but I should get the option to skip it afterwards. Um, you know, I, quality of life things. I absolutely love the crossword puzzles scattered around. It's fantastic to just have random trivia, and it's one of my favorite things to find. So, I think this game does a really good job of just having visual stimulus everywhere and like visual points of interest all over the place, which is an incredible strong point because not only does like the color palette of this game um, meet the aesthetics that I gravitate to, but it also adds points of interest that are cool and like fun to see and add variety to the places that you're going to or have already been to and provide landmarks and things like that. Um, so to add another layer on top of that of just having these crossword puzzles, um, you know, I can't necessarily describe why it was so important for me, but just to come across this random trivia of questions that I probably won't know the answer to, but I'm given a multiple choice of three 33% chance to get it right. Um, I just liked it. The game also is grounded with what seems to be United States history, and I still couldn't get a lot of them right. So it's crazy. But yeah, I really liked how they utilized the space for all of the areas, and then how they kind of dispersed a lot of the interaction points and visual points. I'm really grateful for the map, but as far as I can tell, it can only be viewed for the underside if the current quest is for it. Would be nice if it wasn't tied to the quest. So this happened to me for the woodcutter section, um, and I don't. It could have just been like a bug, or maybe it was intentional. But having the map just be a separate thing, or if I can just visit the underside map whenever I want to, while I'm still in that chapter, that would be great. For combat, I enjoyed the combat. Um, Admittedly, I think this game was on the easier side of difficulty, which is not a problem for me because I'd rather games be too easy than too hard. So I I liked that the challenge level was not uh, extreme for me. That being said, I do feel like when it comes to character growth and that character growth affecting combat encounters, I I wonder where hmm, I wonder where the variety comes from because I feel like a lot of the spells that I got from leveling up didn't necessarily um like some of them didn't feel as useful. A lot of the status effects and things like that don't feel as useful, especially because elites and bosses don't have um like you it's incredibly unlikely that you're going to be able to hit them with a status effect, presumably, based off of what I read in the notes and stuff like that. So for characters like uh, Chester and I think even Emily, to just get a bunch of status effect spells, that felt like rough times. Um, but if that's the intent and the offensive spells are supposed to come from like demons and things like that, then I totally get that. There's tons of opportunity to diversify spell allocation through demons and whatnot. I think where the length of this game um, affects that process negatively or affects the game negatively is in the customization of demons and things like that. Um, I don't think the dungeons, like, you can't go back to older dungeons as far as I know. And so there's not an opportunity to revisit older demons. And uh, there's not an opportunity to like delve into the systems and find something that you like and then, like push yourself towards that specific thing. Like if I wanted an ice creature um from the first dungeon, maybe that's like the best demon in the game or something like that. Um I don't have the opportunities to explore that afterwards. Especially if I've already combined them with other demons and things like that. So, having access to the older demons to some degree in the mid to late game, I think would be very, very useful and fix a couple of demon shenanigans at the end. Um, but let me see. Overall, I think the for the combat, I found myself enjoying it. I like that the bullets refresh for every encounter. Um, I like that every character had their own sense of, I don't want to necessarily say identity, but like maybe a role to them. Not exactly sure what Emily's role would be, maybe just like an all arounder. But um, Ramona was very much a healer slash support esque type character. Chester was very much a rogue ish type character, evasion and instant kill type things. And Hugo was very much a tank type character where, he has the most HP um, and whatnot. So I liked that each character had that kind of role, and you can kind of lean into it, but you could also lean out of it because the equipment allowed you to explore different avenues of what you wanted to do. I don't think you could necessarily turn Ramona into a tank, but you could make her more tanky and not lean so heavily into spell casting and stuff like that, which is nice. For cardinal sins, I don't think there were any cardinal sins. Uh, yeah, I'm gonna say there's no cardinal sins. Can you believe it? For miscellaneous sound and music, I was enjoying the music. I I don't know. I feel like games don't have music, like fighting music, like this game very often. Obviously, there's the popular series out there, but like excluding that, where else do you find music that's like that or like this? Seems very uh, unpopular. Is not the right word for it, but you get the idea. There's no voice acting for graphics. I was drawn to this game. It first got on my radar because I saw the visual style. This type of pixel art looks absolutely wonderful. Then, on top of that, it's a brightly colored game with um, like the perfect aesthetic of, like just all the right bright colors, basically. It's not gray doom and gloom. Well, unless unless you do this, then it's purple doom and gloom. Um, but yeah, and like I mentioned before, I think they did a fantastic job with kind of like the layouts of all the areas and the visual interests and things like that. Enjoyed that a great deal. For others, the game worth recommending, I would recommend this. I think this game is short enough that people can breeze through it, but also has some amount of expansiveness where like you can kind of take your time and do everything that you want to do without feeling rushed. I don't know when the end of the summer break happens, but um, you know, I don't know. I don't know what happens if you just don't do anything for that amount of time. If the developer is watching, so I think there's a fantastic idea that has been executed here fairly well. Um, I I like the ideas. I like how those ideas were inspired by other games out there and kind of made into your own. I like that there were options to do a variety of things multiple times per day. I think the innovation on the formula is absolutely up my alley. Um, my only criticisms slash things that I would like to see improved upon would be making a story that is continuous throughout like the entirety of the game and is impactful at multiple moments of that story taking place, and then the characters just interacting with um, those key moments and having those key moments play a part in how those characters grow and start speaking to each other and speaking to other people and things like that as the game progresses. But yeah, just to reiterate my overall thoughts, I I again find myself in a weird spot of being like, this game is awesome, and like, the story of this game is not necessarily uh like it kind of doesn't exist. But the aesthetics of the game are so amazing. Um, but again, I'm a gameplay first kind of person, so the story doesn't necessarily have to be existent for me to enjoy it. And fortunately, I enjoyed this game. So there you have it. Um, and yeah, that's all I got for this. So I'm going to end my thoughts here. Yeah.